Hello and welcome to the Essential Reads. My name is Isaac and my goal is to bring to you a bunch of classic audiobooks in an easy and accessible way. We are continuing with Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoyevsky, and this is Part 4, Chapter 2. Let's begin. It was almost 8 o'clock. They were both hurrying to Bakaleyev tenements in order to get there before Luzhin. I say, who was that? Razumikhin asked as soon as they were out in the street. Oh, that was Svidrigailov, the landowner I told you about, in whose home my sister was ill-treated when she worked as a governess there. It was because of his amorous attentions that she had to give up that post. Marfa Petrovna turned her out. This Marfa Petrovna subsequently asked Dunya to forgive her, but now she suddenly died. She's the woman we were talking about earlier today. I don't know why, but that man really gives me the creeps. He has arrived in town only just burying his wife. He's a very strange character, and has some sort of desperate plan. It's as if he knows something. Dunya must be protected from him. That's what I wanted to tell you. Are you listening? Protected? What can he possibly do to Avdotya Romanovna? Well, if you say so, Roger. Thank you for keeping me informed. Yes, by all means, let's protect her. Where is he staying? I don't know. Why didn't you ask him? Damn, that's a pity. But don't worry, I'll find out. Did you see him? Raskolnikov asked after a short silence. Oh yes, I made a note of him. A firm mental note. You're sure you saw him? Actually saw him? Raskolnikov said insistently. Yes, I'd remember him anywhere. I've got a good memory for faces. Again, they said nothing for a while. Then we are, Raskolnikov muttered. But you know, at the time I thought, indeed I still do, that what I saw might have been some kind of fancy. What on earth are you talking about? I don't quite think I understand. Well, Raskolnikov went on, contorting his mouth into a smile. You all say that I'm crazy, so just now I even thought it might be true, and I'd merely seen a ghost. What? I mean, who knows? Perhaps I really am crazy. And all these things that have happened these last few days have simply been in my imagination. Oh, Roger! We've upset you again! But what was he saying? Why had he come to see you? Raskolnikov made no reply. Razumikhin thought for a moment. Well then, listen to what I've got to tell you, he began. I came to see you, but you were asleep. Then we ate dinner, and after that I went back to see Porfiry. Zemyatov was still with him. I tried to talk to them, but I couldn't get anywhere. I couldn't communicate with them properly. It's as if they don't understand and are incapable of understanding. Yet it doesn't seem to bother them one bit. I drew Porfiry over to the window and began to talk to him, but again I couldn't get anywhere. He kept looking away, and so did I. In the end, I brought up my fist to his ugly mug and told him, as one relative to another, that I'd smash in his skull. He just looked at me. I spat and went out, and that was it. Really silly. I didn't exchange a word with Zemyatov. But there's one thing you should note. I thought I'd gone and ruined everything, but as I was on my way out down the staircase, a certain thought occurred to me. One that fairly made me think. What are we making all the fuss about? I mean, if you were in some danger or something of that sort, I could understand it. But, I mean, why should you worry? None of this has anything to do with you. So my advice is, spit on them. We'll have a good laugh at them later on, when it's all over. But if I were in your shoes, I'd start mystifying them a bit, too. I mean, how ashamed of themselves they'll be later on. Spit on them. Later on, we'll give them a beating, too. But in the meanwhile, let's just have a good laugh to ourselves. Yes, it stands to reason, Raskolnikov answered. But what will you be saying tomorrow? He thought to himself. Strangely enough, he had not yet once been visited by the notion, what will Razumikhin say when he finds out? With it now in his mind, Raskolnikov gave him a close look. The account Razumikhin had just given of his visit to Porfiry had been of very little interest to him. So much water had flowed under the bridge since then. In the corridor, they bumped into Luzhin. He had turned up punctually at 8 o'clock and was now searching for the room, with the result that all three of them made their entrance together, but without looking at one another and without saying hello. The young men went in ahead, while Pyotr Petrovitch, for the sake of common decency, hung around in the vestibule for a while, taking off his coat. Pulcheria Alexandrovna at once came out to greet him in the doorway. Dunya said hello to her brother. Pyotr Petrovitch came in and exchanged greetings with the ladies politely enough, though with redoubled sedateness. He looked, however, as though he had been slightly put off his guard and had not yet quite recovered it. Pulcheria Alexandrovna, who also seemed rather shy, made haste to allot places to everyone round the table, on which a samovar was bubbling. Dunya and Luzhin were given seats opposite each other, on either side of the table. Razumikhin and Raskolnikov ended up opposite Pulcheria Alexandrovna. Razumikhin next to Luzhin, and Raskolnikov beside his sister. A momentary silence ensued. Pyotr Petrovitch unhurriedly took out a lawn handkerchief that smelt of scent, and blew his nose with the air of a man who, although virtuous, had nonetheless received a certain affront to his dignity, and was, moreover, firmly resolved to obtain an explanation. Out in the hallway, he had wondered whether it might be better not to take off his coat at all, but to leave and to go away, thereby visiting upon both ladies a severe and damning punishment, such as would instantly make them both aware of the whole depth of his feelings. This, however, he did not quite dare to do. What was more, this was a man who could not abide uncertainty. If his instructions had so flagrantly been violated, that meant something must be going on. And whatever it was, he'd better find out before it led anywhere. There would, after all, be plenty of time for punishments later on, and it lay in his power to administer them. "Your journey was satisfactory, I trust," he said, addressing Pulcheria Alexandrovna in an official-sounding tone. "Yes, Pyotr Petrovitch. Thanks be to God." "I am unconscionably pleased to hear it, madam. I trust Avdotya Romanovna did not find it too tiring either." "Oh, I'm young and strong, but mother had a dreadful time," Dunya answered. "What is one to do, madam? Our national railroads are unconscionably long. The so-called Mother Russia is great in more senses than one. I'm afraid that, all my wishes to the contrary, I was totally unable to be at the station to meet you yesterday. I trust, however, that everything went off without too much bother?" "That is a matter of fact, Pyotr Petrovitch, we were very dismayed," Pulcheria Alexandrovna said quickly and in a peculiar tone of voice. "And if God himself had not sent us Dmitri Prokofitch yesterday, we would quite simply have been lost. Here he is, Dmitri Prokofitch Razumikhin," she added, introducing him to Luzhin. "Yes, I had the pleasure. Yesterday," Luzhin muttered. He gave Raskolnikov a hostile, sideways look, and then frowned and fell silent. On the whole, Pyotr Petrovitch belonged to that category of men who, when observed in society, appear extremely amiable and make a special virtue of their amiability, but who, as soon as anything is not quite to their liking, at once lose all their inner resources, and become more reminiscent of sacks of flour than easy-going cavaliers whose task it is to enliven the company. Again, they all fell silent. Raskolnikov kept resolutely taciturn. Avdotya Romanovna did not want to break the silence prematurely. Razumikhin could think of nothing to say, with the result that Pulcheria Alexandrovna flew into another flap. "Marfa Petrovna died. I expect you heard," she began, resorting to her capital fund of conversation material. "Indeed, madam, I have. I was informed at the first rumour thereof, and have in fact come here now in order to tell you that immediately after his wife's funeral, Arkady Ivanovich Svidrigailov set off in a hurry for St. Petersburg. Such, at any rate, would appear to be the case according to the most precise information I have been able to attain." "To St. Petersburg? Here, you mean?" Dunya asked anxiously, exchanging a glance with her mother. "Precisely so, madam, and, needless to say, not without certain ulterior motives. if the speed of his departure and the nature of the preceding circumstances are anything to go by. Oh, good lord! Will he really not leave Dunya in peace even here? Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed. I do not believe that either you or Avdotya Romanovna need have any particular concern. Assuming, of course, that you wish to have nothing whatever to do with him. As for myself, I am now investigating the whereabouts of the address at which he is residing. Oh, Pyotr Petrovich, you have no idea how you frightened me just now. I've only ever seen him twice, and I thought he was horrible. Horrible! I'm convinced he was responsible for Marfa Petrovna's death. With regard to that, one must not jump to conclusions. I have precise information. I will not dispute that he may have contributed to the accelerated tempo of events by the, as it were, psychological influence of the outrage he perpetrated on her. But as for the conduct and general moral characteristics of the person concerned, I am in agreement with you. I do not know whether he is rich now, or what exactly Marfa Petrovna may have left him. I shall have information concerning this in the very nearest future. If I know anything of the men, however, being possessed of even only a few financial resources, he will at once, here in St. Petersburg, revert to his old customs. He is one of the most depraved and lost examples of all that category of men. I have considerable grounds for supposing that Marfa Petrovna, having had the misfortune 8 years ago to fall in love with him and redeem his debts, performed a service to him in another respect, too. It was exclusively thanks to her efforts and sacrifices that a criminal charge, which involved more than a dash of bestial, nay, frantic murderousness, was nipped in the bud at the very outset. A charge which, had he had to answer it in court, could most easily have landed him in Siberia. That is the kind of man he is, if you wish to know. Oh, good lord! Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed. Raskolnikov was listening intently. And you're not making it up when you say you have precise information about this? Dunya asked sternly and imposingly. All I can tell you is what I heard myself in confidence from the deceased Marfa Petrovna. It's worth observing that from a legal point of view, this case was somewhat unsubstantiated. There lived, and indeed still lives, in this part of town a certain foreign woman by the name of Reslich, who is, moreover, a small-time moneylender, and also undertakes certain other kinds of business. Mr. Svidrigailov had for a long time maintained certain close and mysterious contacts with this Reslich woman. She had a distant relative, a niece, I think it was, living with her. This was a girl of about 15, or possibly even only 14. A deaf mute. And the Reslich woman had boundless hatred for her, and grudged her every bite. She even used to beat her in a quite inhuman fashion. One day, the girl was found hanging in the attic. Her death was adjudged to be suicide. After the usual proceedings, the matter was dropped. But later on, someone made a statement to the police that the child had been brutally raped by Svidrigailov. True, all this was unsubstantiated. The information came from another German woman, a prostitute whose testimony could not be relied on. In the end, there was not even an official statement. Thanks to the effort and financial resources of Marfa Petrovna, it all remained a rumor. On the other hand, it is a rumor that tells us a great deal. Avdotya Romanovna, I'm sure that during the time you spent in their house, you also heard about what happened to their manservant Philip, who some 6 years ago died of the tortures that were inflicted on him back in the days of serfdom. Oh, but what I heard was that Philip hanged himself. Precisely so, madam. But it was the system of incessant victimizations and punishments devised and put into execution by Mr. Svidrigailov that compelled, or rather predisposed him to seek a violent death at his own hand. I don't know anything about that, Dunya replied coldly. All I heard was a strange story to the effect that Philip was a hypochondriac, a kind of domestic philosopher, of whom the servants used to say that he'd read too much, and that he hanged himself more because of the taunts of Mr. Svidrigailov than because of his beatings. During my time there, he treated all the servants well, and one could have even said that they liked him, though it's also true that they blamed him for Philip's death. I observe, Avdotya Romanovna, that you seem suddenly to have developed an inclination to defend him. Luzhin remarked, contorting his mouth into an ambiguous smile. Indeed, he is a man of cunning and seductive charm where ladies are concerned, as witnessed by the deplorable example of Marfa Petrovna, who died so strangely. I simply wish to serve your mother and yourself with my advice, in view of his renewed and doubtless impending efforts. As for myself, I am firmly convinced that this man is going to disappear into a debtor's prison again. Marfa Petrovna certainly never had any intention of allotting any substantial sum to him, with his children in mind. And if she did leave him something, then it was only that which was most essential, of little value and ephemeral duration, and would not last a man of his habits even a year.
Pyotr Petrovich, please, I beg of you, do let us stop talking about Mr. Svidrigailov. It's making me feel depressed.
He came to see me just now, Raskolnikov said suddenly, for the first time breaking silence. There were gasps all around. Everyone turned to look at him. Even Pyotr Petrovich looked worried. About an hour and a half ago, while I was asleep, he came in, woke me up, and introduced himself. Raskolnikov continued. He was rather jovial and relaxed, and seemed fully to expect that I'd strike up some sort of friendship with him. By the way, Dunya, he seems absolutely desperate to have a meeting with you, and he asked me to arrange it. He has a proposition to make to you, and he told me what it was. Moreover, he informed me quite definitely that for a week before her death, Marfa Petrovna left you 3,000 rubles in her will, and that you may receive this money in the very nearest future.
Thank God!
Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed, crossing herself.
Pray for her, Dunya, pray for her!
It is indeed true, broke from Luzhin.
Yes. What else did he say?
Dunya said, hurrying her brother. Then he said that he himself was not a rich man, and that the whole of his estate was to go to his children, who are at present living with an aunt. Then he told me he was staying somewhere not far from me. But as to exactly where it was, I don't know. I didn't ask.
But what was it? What was this proposition he wants to make Dunya?
Pulcheria Alexandrovna asked in fear.
Did he tell you?
Yes, he did.
Tell us, then.
I'll tell you later. Raskolnikov fell silent, and addressed himself to his tea. Pyotr Petrovich took out his watch and glanced at it. There is some business I must attend to, and so I shall not intrude any longer, he added with a slight air of pique, and began to get up from his seat.
Oh, don't go, Pyotr Petrovich,
Dunya said.
After all, you intended to come for the whole evening. What's more, in your letter you said there was something you wanted to discuss with Mother.
Precisely so, Avdotya Romanovna, Pyotr Petrovich said imposingly, sitting down on his chair again, but still with his hat in his hands. I did indeed wish to discuss some most important points with both you and your mother. But just as there are certain proposals of Mr. Svidrigailov which your brother appears unable to talk about in my presence, so there are certain most important matters I too do not wish to discuss in the presence of others. What is more, my fundamental and most urgent request has not been obeyed. Luzhin made a sour face and lapsed into a sedate silence.
Your request that my brother not be present at our meeting was disregarded at my insistence, said Dunya. You wrote twice in your letter that you had received an insult from him. I think it ought to be cleared up at once, and the two of you ought to settle your differences. And if Roger really did insult you, then he must and will apologize to you.
Pyotr Petrovich at once began to bully. There are certain insults, Avdotya Romanovna, with which all the goodwill in the world is impossible to forget. There are certain limits beyond which it is inadvisable to go, as, once having crossed them, there may be no going back.
That's not really what I was talking about, Pyotr Petrovich,
Dunya broke in with some impatience.
What you must understand is that the whole of our future now hangs on the question of whether all this can be cleared up and settled as soon as possible. I will tell you right now that I cannot view the matter in any other light, and that if you value me at all, then, even though it may be hard, all this nonsense must end today. I repeat, if my brother has wronged you, he will ask your forgiveness.
It surprises me that you should put the matter in those terms, Avdotya Romanovna, Luzhin said, getting more and more irritated. While I think highly of you and, as it were, adore you, at the same time I think I should make it perfectly plain that there may very well be a member of your family for whom I have not the slightest affection. In proffering my claim to the favor of your hand, I cannot at the same time assume obligations which may be incompatible.
Oh, stop being so touchy, Pyotr Petrovich!
Dunya interrupted with feeling.
Please try to behave like the intelligent and noble-spirited men I have always considered you, and should like to go on considering you. I have given you the great promise. I am your betrothed. Please trust me and have confidence in my power of dispassionate judgment in this matter. My taking on the role of a judge is as much a surprise to my brother as it is to you. Then, after having received your letter today, I asked him to be present at our meeting. I told him nothing of my intentions. It's like this, you see. If the two of you don't settle your differences, I shall have to choose either you or him. That is how matters stand with regard to you both. I don't want to make the wrong choice. If I choose you, then I must break with my brother. If I choose my brother, I must break with you. Now I want to discover beyond any shadow of a doubt whether he is a true brother to me or not. And as for you, what I want to find out is whether you value me, think highly of me, whether you would be a true husband to me.
Evdokya Romanovna, Luzhin said, wincing. Your words are all too clear to me. And I must say that I find them positively offensive, bearing in mind the position I have the honor to hold in your regard, quite apart from the strange and offensive comparisons you have made. Setting me on a par with an arrogant youth, you imply by your remarks the possibility of breaking the promise you gave me. Either you or him, you say, thereby demonstrating to me how little I mean to you. I find this more than I can tolerate, in view of the relations and commitments that exist between us.
What?
Dunya exclaimed, blazing up.
I put your interest on the same level as all that has hitherto been precious to me in life, that has constituted the integrity of my life, and you suddenly take offense because you think I value you too little?
Raskolnikov smiled a silent, caustic smile, and Razumikhin was seized with an inward mirth. But Pyotr Petrovich did not accept Dunya's reply. On the contrary, with every word she spoke, he was growing more and more quarrelsome and irritable, as though he were acquiring a taste for it. The love you feel for your future companion in life, for your husband, must come before your love for your brother, he pronounced sententiously. But however that may be, it is out of the question for me to be placed on an equal level with him. Even though I insisted earlier that I would not and could not explain in the presence of your brother the reasons for my coming here, I now intend to address your esteemed mother in respect of a certain salient point that affects my honor. Your son, he said, turning to Pulcheria Alexandrovna, yesterday in the presence of Mr. Razumikhin. That's right, isn't it? I'm sorry, your name has slipped from my memory, he said, bowing amiably to Razumikhin. Insulted me by misrepresenting a remark I made to you in the course of a private conversation as we were having coffee together one day. Namely, that there is more conjugal advantage to be obtained from marrying a girl from a poor family who has already experienced some of life's woes than there is in marrying one from a well-off background, because the former would be more likely to behave in a moral fashion. Your son deliberately exaggerated the import of my words in the point of absurdity, accusing me of evil intentions, and, in my opinion, founded his attack on material drawn from your own correspondence with him. I shall consider myself fortunate, Pulcheria Alexandrovna, if you can succeed in assuring me that the contrary is the case, thus doing much to set my mind at rest. Will you be so good as to tell me in exactly what terms you conveyed my words in your letter to Rodion Romanovich?
I don't remember,
Pulcheria Alexandrovna said, getting confused.
I conveyed them in the sense in which I'd understood them. I don't know what Roger told you. Perhaps he did exaggerate.
He could not have done so without your influence.
Pyotr Petrovich,
Pulcheria Alexandrovna said with dignity.
The proof that Dunya and I did not take your words in too negative a sense is that we are here. Bravo, mother!
Dunya said approvingly. So I'm to blame there too, am I? Luzhin said in an offended tone.
Look, Pyotr Petrovich, you're forever blaming Rodion, but you yourself said something that wasn't true about him in that letter you wrote,
Pulcheria Alexandrovna added, gaining some courage. I do not recall having written anything untrue, madam.
What you wrote in your letter,
Raskolnikov said abruptly, without turning to face Luzhin,
was that I gave that money yesterday not to the widow of the man who had been trampled to death, as was actually the case, but to his daughter, whom I hadn't met until yesterday. You wrote that in order to stir up unpleasantness between me and my family. And to that purpose you added some filthy remarks about the behavior of a girl you don't even know. It's all base lies and slander.
Pardon me, sir, Luzhin replied, quivering with vindictive rage. In my letter, I expatiated on your qualities and actions solely in response to the request of your mother and sister that I describe them, as they wished to know in what state I had found you, and what sort of an impression you had made on me. As for the comments you refer to, I defy you to quote one line of them that is not true. In other words, prove to me that you were not wasting your money, and that that family, though unfortunate, did not contain unworthy persons.
Well, if you want my opinion, you, with all your attributes of worthiness, are not worth the little finger of the unhappy girl at whom you cast your stone.
So you would allow her into the company of your mother and sister, would you?
I've already done it, if you really want to know. I made her sit down with Mother and Dunya when she came to visit me today. Roger!
Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed. Dunya blushed. Razumikhin knit his eyebrows. Luzhin gave a superior, caustic smile. I think you may judge for yourself, Avdotya Romanovna, he said. What agreement is possible here? I hope that this matter is now concluded and fully explained once and for all. Now, however, I shall betake myself elsewhere, in order not to disturb the continued pleasantness of this family reunion and the divulging of confessions. He rose from his chair and picked up his hat. As I leave, however, I venture to suggest that in future I be spared such meetings, and, as it were, compromising situations. I address a peculiar request to you in this regard, my dear Pulcheria Alexandrovna. All the more so, since my letter was addressed to you, and not to anyone else. Pulcheria Alexandrovna was somewhat offended.
Anyone might think that you were trying to take us completely into your power, Pyotr Petrovich. Dunya has told you the reason for your request not being obeyed. She acted with the best of intentions. You know, your letter reads to me as though you were giving me orders. Are we really to consider your every request a command? I, for my part, would like to say that you ought to be extremely tactful and considerate to us now, because we've given up everything and, trusting you, have come here. Practically in your power already, just for having done that.
That is not entirely just, Pulcheria Alexandrovna. Especially not at the present moment, when tidings have arrived concerning the 3,000 rubles bequeathed by Marfa Petrovna. Tidings most opportune, it would appear, given the new tone in which you have begun to address me, he added bitingly.
If that remark is anything to go by, one can really only suppose that you've been calculating on our helplessness,
Dunya observed in irritation. Well, now at any rate I can make no such calculations. And I am particularly anxious not to impede the divulging of confidential propositions emanating from the person of Arkady Ivanovich Svidrigailov. Proposals he has entrusted to your brother and which, I see, may be of fundamental and possibly agreeable significance to you.
Oh, good heavens!
Pulcheria Alexandrovna exclaimed. Razumikhin could not keep still on his chair.
Don't you feel ashamed now, sister?
Raskolnikov asked.
Yes, I do, Roger,
Dunya said.
Pyotr Petrovich, get out of here!
She said to him, pale with anger.
Pyotr Petrovich, it seemed, had not at all expected such an ending to the scene. Too much belief in his own power, and in the helplessness of his victims. Even now he could not quite believe it. He turned pale, and his lips began to quiver. Avdotya Romanovna,
If I go out of that door now with parting words like those, then, of this you may be certain, I shall never return. Think about it carefully. My word is my bond.
What effrontery! Dunya exclaimed, getting up quickly. Why, I don't want you to return!
What? So that's it?
Luzhin shouted, right up to the last moment, unable to believe the possibility of such a denouement, and therefore now totally at a loss.
So that's it? But you know, Avdotya Romanovna, I may fight this in court.
What right do you have to speak to her like that? What case can you possibly have against her? And what rights do you have in any way? Do you think I would give my Dunya to a man like you? Go away! Leave us alone! We ourselves are to blame for having agreed to a bad arrangement, and I am the one who bears the most guilt.
You don't say, Pulcheria Alexandrovna!
Luzhin cried in a rabid turmoil of fury.
But you know you have bound me by your word, which you are now breaking. And what is more, I have, as it were, been involved in certain expenses.
This final complaint was so characteristic of Pyotr Petrovich that Raskolnikov, pale with anger and the effort of repressing it, suddenly could contain himself no longer, and burst out laughing. Expenses? What expenses? I suppose you mean our trunk. But you know very well that the guards took it on the train for nothing. Good Lord, you say we're bound to you? I think you ought to bear in mind, Pyotr Petrovich, that it's you who have bound us hand and foot, not the other way around. That's enough, Mother. Please, that's enough. Avdotya Romanovna implored her. Pyotr Petrovich, please be so kind as to leave.
Very well, madam. But one last word before I do, he said, no longer quite in control of himself. Your mother would appear to have completely forgotten that I ventured to take you, as it were, in the face of the rumors that were being passed around town, and had spread over the entire neighborhood concerning your reputation. By thus spurning public opinion of your sake, and by re-establishing your good name, I believe I might most possibly be within my rights in expecting something in return from you, and even in demanding your gratitude. Only now my eyes have been opened. I myself see that I may have acted most unwisely in neglecting the public voice.
Does he really want his head broken or what? Razumikhin shouted, leaping up from his chair and already preparing to administer retribution. You're base and wicked men, said Dunya. That will do now. No more gestures, Raskolnikov exclaimed, holding Razumikhin back. Then he went right up to Luzhin, so that their faces almost touched. Be so good as to get out of here, he said quietly and distinctly. And not another word. Otherwise... For a few seconds, Luzhin stared at him with features that were pale and twisted with hostile rage. Then he turned and went out. And it is possible that no man ever bore within his heart so much of violent hatred for another human being as this man did for Raskolnikov. It was Raskolnikov, and Raskolnikov alone, whom he blamed for everything. It is worth noting that, even as he made his way downstairs, he still fancied that his cause might not yet be entirely lost, and that, in the case of the ladies at least, might, most possibly, be capable of rectification. Thank you so very much for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, share, all that jazz, and if you really enjoyed, do subscribe, because there is more to come. We're officially over halfway through the book! I hope you're enjoying it. I'm loving this book. I really hope that you guys are enjoying it too. If you're listening on podcast, please leave a review as it helps get this in front of as many people as possible, and reading your reviews really makes my day. It is so hot in my apartment. If you want to support the show further, there's a Ko-Fi link which is now on screen, or if you don't have the money to be able to support me, or the want, you know, that's possible too. Just listen to the show on Spotify while you're asleep or while you're awake,
and listen to me there to help me get the monetization requirements that I need on Spotify as well. That would be absolutely fantastic if you could help me there. Once again, thank you very, very much for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.